Greetings, my fellow freedom-loving sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to the LL3 podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful mountaineer state of West Virginia, called West Virginia. And today's date is Saturday, July 25th, 2020. Pretty quiet out here right now. A little bit hot. You can see the heat from the background by the trees. How everyone's staying focused, paying attention, and all that good stuff. Looks like there's an investigation requested by Governor DeSantis on the COVID-19 counts. Looks like many of them have participated, but never got tested due to the long lines and all that. So when you see these reports about Florida's on fire, you always got to say how accurate it really is. It's the fear, my friends. Government loves it. Tyrants manifest over it. It looks like that lawsuit officially has been filed over the mask ordinance, not the ordinance, excuse me, the edict, the order from Administrator Bureaucrat Bertha Henry, that is. And they called it a law. This is how pathetic some of these elected servants are and their lackeys. Assume that you're all dumb, pathetic peasants. Well, I can say this, there's plenty of information I've been putting out there on this matter, and I support this lawsuit. I'm gonna have to read more about it, probably after the show. I'm gonna check it out, see I'm on this lawsuit, see what he has to say and all that. If I'm heading back to South Florida, I should check it out. It'll be very interesting. But hopefully he has all his ducks in a row, especially the scientific aspect. There's information out there. In the workplace, you need at least 19.25% oxygen in the room. Below that, deprives. If you wear a mask, it does deprive the oxygen because you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide. Remember, it's called poison. Trees, they breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Human beings are just the opposite. And other animals as well, like dogs and cats. So those areas you always got to look at. So I'm gonna have to check it out. If I'm down there, before I head to the courthouse, and I'm going to have to see what their county attorney has to say. But hopefully get all your information. If you have to send them some, at least a few things, have it on his face, and request a jury. As far as I'm concerned, that'll be very good. Think locally, act locally. And some people call him an idiot. Well, hey, at least stand up for what's right. What the hell you're doing? Go on your hands and knees and licking the boots of tyranny? That's what you're stating to me? Well, it's just an example of what's happening. Of course, the coup. There's all this divide and rule. Nothing new under the sun. Happened in South Africa and even Yugoslavia. People are buying it. You're a bunch of damn fools. You got a bunch of folks out there with IQs of turnips. Don't take the time to read. You just listen to somebody go, okay. Bone fetchers. Woo! Yes, mocking all you clowns. All being played as usual. So, I'm going to be talking a couple of topics. One's going to be about a little bit of question about the New York Times article. And people will get out too on the whole federal troops by Trump. And it's funny because they all be claimed to be undercover, unmarked. How many of you remember what Barack Obama has to say when he ran for president? We don't just need a military force. that's well trained and well funded. We need a civilian force, just the same. And we go all the way back to George Washington with the Whiskey Rebellion. We go with Abraham Lincoln too, and everyone else in between and beyond. All you gotta do, folks, study a little history. Trust me, it's nothing new under the sun. You got folks out there that like to shoot their mouths. They can run the city. They can't even wipe their own rear ends. Now they're complaining. They love dishing out but hate receiving when it comes to tyranny. Yeah, it's called blowback. I'm not condoning it, but many of these cities have done it to themselves. You let the state, you let these statist fools tell you what to do. You got natural rights. That's including Oregon. I read your Declaration of Rights, and you're going to let them step all over you? I'm not saying everyone in Portland is like that, or Oregon. A lot of awesome people, beautiful people live there. But they shouldn't go around have that mindset of, please tread on me. Even in Broward County as well, city of Fort Lauderdale, which I live. I can see the same thing. Everyone's running fear, worried about getting shut down. You should all, in Broward County, you should all rally around this person's filing this lawsuit. Don't be a wuss, an Uncle Tom, or an Angel Mama, or a butt boy, butt girl, doesn't matter. Don't be a subservient fool. Because you guys got the power over them. Why? Because they're attorneys? Who the hell cares? They're nothing without the people. Plain and simple. So, enough of my digression there. My rant. We're going to talk about this one here that happened 4 days ago, to be exact. John Whitehead's commentary. The federal coup to overthrow the states and Nix the 10th Amendment is underway. Federal overreach. Well, that's what Mr. Whitehead has to say. I don't need invitations by the state mayors, the state governors, to do our job. We're going to do that. And whether they like us there or not. Acting Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, defense of the Trump administration's deployment of militarized federal police and address civil unrest in the states. This is a wake-up call. What is unfolding before our very eyes with police agencies denying local governments in order to tag into the power of federal militarized police troops in order to put down domestic unrest could very quickly snowball into an act of aggression against the states, a coup by armed militarized agents of the federal government. At a minimum, this is an attack on the 10th Amendment, which affirms the sovereignty of the states and the citizenry and the rights of the states to stand as a bulwark against overreach and power grabs by the federal government. If you're still deluding yourself into believing this thinly veiled excuse in martial law is anything other than an attempt to bulldoze, which means the Constitution, to reinforce the non-fisted rule of the police state, you need to stop drinking the Kool-Aid. This is no longer about partisan politics or civil unrest or even authoritarian impulses. This is the turning point. Unless we take back the reins, and soon, looking back on this time years from now, historians may well point to the event of 2020 as the death blow to America's short-lived experiment in self-government. The government's recent action in Portland, Oregon is unidentified federal agents believed to be the Border Police, ICE, and DHS agents, wearing military fatigues with patches just say police and sporting all kinds of weapons. Descended unwitted on the city unmarked vehicles, snatching protesters off the streets and detaining them without formally arresting them or offering any explanation of what they're being held is foretaste of what's to come. One of these detainees was a 53-year-old disabled Navy veteran who was in downtown Portland during protests but not a participant, concerned about tactics being used by government agents who taken an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Christopher David tried to speak to secret police, almost immediately was assaulted by federal agents, beaten with batons and peppered spray. Another peaceful protester was reportedly shot in the head with an impact weapon by this federal goon squad. The Trump administration has already announced its plan to deploy these Border Patrol agents to other cities across the country. Chicago's is supposedly next, in an apparent to bid down civil unrest. Yet the overriding concerns by the state and local government officials to Trump's plan suggest that weaponizing the DHS as an occupying army will only provoke more violence and unrest. We've been set up. Under the guise of protecting federal properties against civil unrest, the Trump administration has formed a task force of secret agents who look, dress, act like military stormtroopers on a raid and have been empowered to roam cities in unmarked vehicles, snatching citizens off the streets, whether they or not they've been engaged in illegal activities. As the Gardner report, the incidents being described sound eerily reminiscent of the CIA's post-9/11 rendition program under George W. Bush. That was interesting there, where intelligence agents would roll up in unmarked vans in foreign countries, blindfold terrorist suspects, many of them determined to be innocent, kidnap them without explanation. Only instead of occurring on the streets of Italy or the Middle East, it's happening in downtown Portland. The so-called racial justice activists who made looting, violence, vandalism, intimidation tactics the hallmarks of their protests have played right into the government's hands. They have delivered all of us into the police state's hands. And exactly, yes, he's absolutely correct. Let me just see what I can do here. Try to at least get it bigger if possible. Okay, let me see here. No. Let me just check something out here, folks. Just, I think I'm... Yeah, so, very interesting. So you got to always look at those areas, okay? And it's exactly, so remember, when you got too much federal overreach, it gets very dangerous. And it happens on both sides, regardless if it's Democrat or Republican, okay? It's just a lot of past history in these areas. And it's funny because everyone likes to praise these individuals, like exceptionalism is good. Well, the truth of the matter is it has been very disturbing, okay? And, of course, here, there's a reason Trump has tapped the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection for this dirty business. These agencies are notorious for their lawlessness, routinely sidestepping the Constitution and trampling on the rights of anyone who gets in their way, including legal citizens. Indeed, it was only a matter of time before these roving bands of Border Patrol agents began flexing their muscles far beyond the nation's border and exercising their right to disregard the Constitution at every turn. Expect these Border Patrol cops aren't just disregarding the Constitution. They're trampling all over the Constitution, especially the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits the government from carrying out egregious warrantless searches and seizures without probable cause. As part of the government's so-called crackdown on illegal immigration, drugs, and trafficking, its Border Patrol cops have been expanding their reach, roaming further afield, subjecting greater numbers of Americans to warrantless searches, ID checkpoints, transportation checks, and even surveillance on private property far beyond the boundaries of the before lands. That so-called border, once thin borderline, has become an ever-thickening band spreading deeper and deeper inside the country. Now, that's the latest salvo by the Trump administration and his so-called crackdown on rioting and civil unrest. America itself is about to become a constitution-free zone where freedom is off limits and government agents have all the power. We the people have none. The Customs and Border Protection, CBP, with this more than 60,000 employees supplemented by the National Guard and the U.S. military in an arm of the Department of Homeland Security, a national police force imbued with all brutality, ineptitude, and corruption, such as Roe implies. As journalist Todd Miller explains, in these vast domains, Homeland Security authorities can institute roving patrols with broad extra-constitutional powers backed by national security, immigration enforcement, and government interdiction mandates. There are Border Patrol can set up traffic checkpoints and fly surveillance drones overhead with a high-power cameras and radars that can track your movements. Within 25 miles of international boundary, CBP agents can enter a person's private property without a warrant. Just about every nefarious deed, tactic, or thuggish policy advanced by the government today can be traced back to the DHS, its police state mindset, and billions of dollars it distributes to local police agencies in the form of grants to transform them into extensions of the military. As Miller points out, government has turned the nation's expanding border regions into a ripe place to experiment, where tearing apart the Constitution, a place where not just undocumented border crossers, but millions of borderland residents have become the targets of continual surveillance in the much same way that the police across the country have been schooled in the art of sidestepping the Constitution. Border cops have also been drilled in the art of anything goes in the name of national security. In fact, according to FOIA documents shared with The Intercept, border cops even have a checklist of possible behaviors that warrant overriding the Constitution and subjecting individuals, including American citizens, to stop, searches, seizures, interrogations, and even arrest. For instance, if you're driving a vehicle to a border cop looks unusual in some way, you can be stopped. If your passenger look dirty or unusual, you can be stopped. Or if you or your passenger took a long look at a cop, you can be stopped. If you are anywhere near a border, near being within 100 miles of a border, or in a city or a bus or at an airport, you can be stopped and asked to prove you're legally allowed to be in the country. If you're traveling on a public road that smugglers and other criminals may have traveled, you can be stopped. If you're not driving in the same direction as other cars, you can be stopped. If you appear to be avoiding a police checkpoint, you can be stopped. If your car appears to be way down, you can be stopped. If your vehicle is from out of town, whatever that might be, you can be stopped. If you're driving a car that criminal types have also driven, you can be stopped. If your car appears to have been altered or modified, you can be stopped. If the cargo area of your vehicle is covered, you can be stopped. If you're driving during the time of day or night that border cops find suspicious, you can be stopped. If you're driving when border cops are changing shifts, you can be stopped. If you're driving in a motorcade or in another vehicle, you can be stopped. If your car appears dusty, you can be stopped. If people with you trying to avoid being seen or exhibit unusual behavior, you can be stopped. If You slow down. After seeing the cop, you can be stopped. In Portland, which is 400 miles away from the border, protesters didn't have to be near federal buildings to be targeted. Some claim to be targeted for simply wearing black clothing in the area of the demonstration. Remember, they declared Antifa as a domestic terrorist. Okay, so those are like color codes. All right, so I'm just going to continue on here, and are you starting to get the picture yet? This was never about illegal aliens and border crossings at all. It's been a test to see how far we the people will allow the government to push the limits of the Constitution. We've been falling in this particular test for a long time now. It was 1798 when Americans, their feared stoked to be rumbling with a quasi-war with France, failed to protest. The Alien Seditions Act, which criminalized any government speech, empowered the government to deport dangerous non-citizens, and made it harder for immigrants to vote. During the Civil War, Americans went along with Abraham Lincoln, surrendered the writ of habeas corpus, the right to a speedy trial, and authorized government officials to spy on American on Americans' mail. During World War I, Americans took stride when President Woodrow Wilson and Congress adopted the Espionage and Seditions Act, which made it a crime to interfere with the war effort and criminalize any speech critical of war. By World War II, Americans were marching in lockstep with the government, expanding war powers to imprison Japanese American citizens in detainment camps, censor mail, and lay the groundwork for the future surveillance state. That was Executive Order 1966. That was signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It wasn't just Japanese Americans, but German and Italian descents as well. Okay, just to give you guys a little bit more input. Fast forward to the Cold War scares. All right, hold on here. I'm just getting a few things here. Okay, cool. And it says here, yeah, I'm getting like interruptions. Sorry about that. Fast forward to the Cold War scares of McCarthy's era, here on un-American activities, the government surveillance of civil rights activists such as Martin Luther King Jr., all the way in the name of national security. By the time 9/11 rolled around, all George W. Bush had to do was claim the country was being invaded by terrorists, and the government was given greater powers to spy, search, detain, and arrest American citizens in order to keep America safe. The terrorist invasion never really happened, but the government kept its newly acquired police powers made possible by the nefarious USA Patriot Act. Barack Obama continued Bush's trend of undermining the Constitution, going so far to give the military the power to strip Americans of their constitutional rights, label them extremists, and detain them indefinitely without trial, in all the name of keeping Americans safe. That was the NDAA, which was signed on December 31st, 2011. Okay, so just to let you folks know, you got some sneaky scumbags out there. All right. Despite the fact that beneath the military's power to detain American citizens violate not only the U.S. law and the Constitution, but also international laws, the government has refused to relinquish its detention powers made possible by the National Defense Authorization Act, or other words, NDAA. Then President Trump took office, claiming the country was being invaded by dangerous immigrants and insisting the only way to keep America safe was to build an expensive border wall, expand the reach of Border Patrol, and empower the military to assist with border control. The so-called immigration crisis has now morphed into multiple crises: domestic extremism, COVID-19 pandemic, race wars, civil unrest, etc., that the U.S. government is eager to use in order to expand its powers. Okay, so all you so-called activists out there, you better be paying attention to this. All right? And I say that out of love, all right, because there's some good people out there, I know, sometimes they get misconstrued, themselves. They misconstrue themselves. And I'm saying that in good faith, too. And we'll continue on. Yet, as we've learned the hard way, once the government acquires and uses additional powers to spy on its citizens, to carry out surveillance, to transform its police powers into the extensions of the police, to seize taxpayer funds, to wage endless wars, to censor and silence dissidents, to identify potential troublemakers, to detain citizens without due process, it does not voluntarily relinquish them. This is a slippery slope on which we've been traveling for far too long. As Yale historian Timothy Snyder explains, this is the classic way that violence happens in authoritarian regimes, whether it's Franco Spain or whether it's the Russian Empire. The people who are getting used to committing violence on the border are then brought in to commit violence against the people in the interior. Sure, it is the Trump administration calling the shots right now, but it is government agents armed with totalitarian powers are beholden to the bureaucratic deep state who are carrying out these orders in defiance of the U.S. Constitution and all it represents. Whether it's Trump or Biden, someone else altogether, this year or a dozen years from now, from the damage that has been done, as I make clear in my book, Battlefield America, The War on American People, we have allowed the president to acquire dictatorial powers that can be unleashed at any moment. There is a reason the Trump administration is consulting with John Yoo. The Bush-era attorney notorious are for justifying waterboarding torture tactics against detainees. They are now not looking to understand how to follow the law and abide by the Constitution. Rather, they are desperately seeking a way to thwart the Constitution. As Harvard constitutional law professor Lawrence Tribe recognizes, dictatorial hunger for power is insatiable. It's insatiable. This is how it begins. This is how it always begins. Don't be fooled into thinking of any of this will change when the next election rolls around. He is absolutely correct. You always got to look at things into a bigger picture. It's a lot more treacherous than what we know. And a lot of folks out there worry about white supremacy. You've all been duped. And supporting these political faction teams, all been duped, swindled, and screwed. And that's the truth. And it's funny because even you got to look at your local government servants, local and state government servants as well. Okay, Kate Brown, I am not too pleased with. She's another oath-breaking sap, and even Thomas and the Mayor Wheeler. You know why they love dishing out but hate receiving? They don't want to see certain other groups of people protest in their town, like the Proud Boys. It doesn't matter if you like them or not. Like one group can do it, they can't. Yeah, more their own little tyrants. Okay, but now they love dishing out, but they hate receiving. I wonder why. So the truth of the matter is, folks, always support your sheriffs. They're the most powerful people on the local level. Think locally, act locally. It's not about praising Trump or anything like that. I'm not really too thrilled because he never got permission. He never got permission. They never was called by the state and local governments to, hey, we need you. So that's what 10th Amendment's about. States' rights. And all you Trumpsters out there, you should be critical on this as well. Maybe at war. They may call it a civil war. Civil unrest. Well, it's like a big cloak and dagger adventure. Who's going to benefit the most? The ones that believe they have power. So I prefer encourage everyone out there, focus on your state and local governments. If they're goofing around, call them out on it. Plenty of information you can use. Like I said before in the very beginning of this podcast, they need us Well, we need them. Always look at the bigger picture. So I'm going to do one more here. Actually, I'm going to be right back. So, let's see, where are you? So stay tuned. Alright, cool. I had to take care of a couple things, real brief. So I'm going to do one more article here. I know I'm a little bit over, but that's okay. Something here I just got. It's from naturalnews.com, written by Ethan Huff. New York Times said violent Antifa terrorists. Sorry, dang. Need to terrorize Portland even more to stave off fascism. Good grief. Yeah, that's funny. Fascism fighting tyranny fighting tyranny. Yay. All right, let's see what this person has to say. It's the opinion of New York Times reporter Mike Baker that the anti-fascist group Antifa is a mostly peaceful movement simply trying to put a stop to police violence. Okay. Talk about bought and paid for. Probably has a I Love Jim Jones button. He wrote this, right? So I'm going to continue on here. On the other hand, President Trump's recent deployment of federal troops to violent Antifa-infested areas like Portland represents the hyper-fascism that Antifa is needed to fight, Baker contends. In a recent piece he wrote entitled, Chaos Engulfs the Left, the Right, and the Moms in the Middle, Baker makes the claim that Antifa needs an even stronger presence in places like Portland to fight back against Trump's efforts to restore law and order. The fact that any federal officer are in Portland at all, Baker contends, shows that fears about rising fascism in the United States are justified. Framing Antifa's response to George Floyd's death in terms of being complicated mix of grievances with a wide array of people expressing then using a multitude of tactics to make sure they get heard. Baker tries to paint Antifa as the good guys in the fight and the federal government's officers who are being deployed as the aggressors inciting violence. And the Gordian knot of frustration and escalation, most everyone seems to agree about one thing. The combative deployment of camouflage federal agents has only made things worse, Baker contends, describing Antifa's members as grassroots folks who have long denounced police militarization and punishing criminal criminal justice system. Baker suggests that only some Antifas wear black and embrace anarchist-style tactic. Most of the rest, he claims, have shown up, demonstrate peacefully. Left-wing media says Antifa is innocent and Trump is the one spreading the chaos and violence. On one day after Baker published his opinion piece, the Times published another lead story by Maggie Haberman, Nick Crossatani, and Annie Kari. Say here, reiterating Baker's position that Trump's law and order agenda is to be feared because it's further stoking more unrest and violence. In addition to sending federal troops into Portland, Trump threatens to dispatch more to other cities. This trio wrote that Trump's re-election campaign is spending millions of dollars of several ominous television ads that promoted fear and dovetail with his political message of law and order. It was not until Trump sent an influx of agents into Portland they added that situation grew anonymous scenes of confrontations and chaos only occurred after Trump got involved in its implication, all for the purpose of burnishing a false narrative about Democratic elected officials allowing dangerous protesters to create widespread bedlam. Many other mainstream media outlets are spreading the same propaganda, the narrative being that Trump is the one who is responsible for inciting chaos and violence by sending federal troops into Democratic stronghold cities in the lead up to the 2020 election. Antifa is just a peaceful movement that is misunderstood, they said, and Trump is the aggressor who is going after is part of political tactic to win re-election. At no point in time has the far left incited its own violence, rioting and looting, in other words. It is all Trump's fault, the left-wing media claims, even though Portland has experienced nightly riots for more than 50 consecutive days, beginning long before the Fed showed up. The Times had made perfectly clear that they see no issue with any of the events that have been taking place in Portland, whether it is doxed and injured law enforcement officials or property destruction, writes Clay Waters for Newsbusters. They exist in their homes and newsrooms without having violence visit their front door. For more related news about the deception being spread by left-wing mainstream media, be sure to check out propaganda.news. Well, it's a faction game. This is why. It is what it is. That's why I always tell everybody you got to always look at the fine lines. And that's why these little gangsters, I call them, trying to be king of the hill, or their leaders be king of the hill. Well, Portland's been having battles, inner conflicts for a very good long time. And of course, guys like Mayor Wheeler and Kate Brown, let them do it. And of course, there's enough information providing information that some of these weapons are being sent from China. And these individuals represent this particular faction, and others are trying to start civil strife. So there's always a cloak and dagger adventure, folks. But the bottom line is this: be ready, and others that I say before mentioned, and be proactive in your own communities the best you can. Like I said before, they're nothing without us. I do find this dangerous as well, because if Trump can do this, who's going to be the next one? Always got to look at those areas too. All right, that's it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, if you send something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence with decorum. Furthermore, I will leave all my footnotes on my Spreaker page. If you want to donate, you can hit me at paypal.me/local3. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. I see my dog coming out here and want to say hello. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.